Hi, and welcome to this training video. In this training video, we are going to create and configure your first vNet pairing. We're going to do an overview of what is vNet pairing, and then we'll go into the Azure portal and deploy this live from the ground up so that you can learn how to do it yourself. So a virtual network pairing enables you to seamlessly connect two or more virtual networks in Azure. Virtual networks appear as one for connectivity purposes. Like traffic between virtual machines in the same network, traffic is routed through the Microsoft's private network only. Again, as you can see, I've got two separate vNets, one on the 10.2 network and one on the 10.1 network. Obviously, they can't talk to each other because the networks and the subnets are different. So we need to set up pairing. Pairing will allow us to communicate to those different vNets or virtual networks so that we can share resources or access resources on that particular vNet. So again, vNet pairing allows two vNets in the same region to connect with each other without having to set up VPN gateways. Prior to vNet pairing, we used to use vNet to vNet connections. If the vNets are in the same region, we can connect them using vNet pairing. Again, virtual network in Azure is free of charge. However, the Azure vNet charges itself is not free. You charge for inbound and outbound traffic, and as you can see, it's not that expensive. It's pretty cheap. It all depends on what you want to do with your vNet. And of course, as you know, there are many ways to set up a vNet pairing, and there are many different roads to roam. But the whole idea of this lab is to get you up and running with creating your first vNet in your same region. Of course, as you can see, our lab, we're going to have an Auckland vNet and we're going to have a Sydney vNet. They're going to have different IP addresses or different address ranges, and we're going to connect to each other and see if we can talk. So the first phase obviously is going to be to create the virtual machines, the resource groups, then to create the vNets, and then of course to then connect those vNets up and then obviously test to make sure we can talk to each other, and then we would have completed the lab. Again, I encourage you to go and have a look at the Microsoft link below. It's a very good link. It'll give you a better understanding of vNets. Again, this lab and most of the labs I do are designed to get you up and running pretty quickly in creating resources, creating virtual machines, creating virtual networks and vNets and so on. Again, I'd like to thank you so much for subscribing to my YouTube channel. I'd like to thank you for connecting with me on LinkedIn. And I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. You guys are absolutely awesome. You guys are just fantastic. So with that being said, let's log into the Azure portal and let's get this lab done. Hi, as you can see, I've gone ahead and logged into the portal. So in order to set up our vNet to vNet integration so we can talk to each other, we need to first of all create two separate vNets. So I'm going to do this from the ground up so that you guys can learn how to do this yourself, so that you can learn how vNet pairing works. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a resource group. So I've got some stuff typed out in Notepad to help save time. I'm going to click create, and this is going to create my first resource group, and I'm going to call this vNet Auckland. Click review and click create. And this is going to go away and create that vNet for us. I mean, sorry, not vNet, resource group. I'm going to go ahead and create another resource group. And I'm going to call this one vNet Sydney. Click create and click create. Now, this is going to create those resource groups for us. So the next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and create a virtual machine. So I'm going to click virtual machine. I'm going to click create virtual machine, and then I'm going to go ahead and select the Auckland resource group that we created, and I'm going to go ahead and give my Auckland virtual machine a name. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that name in. Obviously I've got this in Notepad. I'm going to leave it as the same. I'm just going to type in user AZ admin, and I'm going to go ahead and type in my password. And I'm going to type my password in again. and I'm going to go ahead and go next. I'm going to obviously select standard SSD because we're just doing a test. I'm going to go to networking. I'm going to accept the defaults. Notice the subnet IP range, and just remember that. I'm going to go ahead and select next for management. I'm going to disable boot diagnostics because I do not need it. I'm going to go next again. We're not going to worry about tagging or any other information for now. And I'm going to click next. And then this is going to go away and do a validation process. And once this validation has passed, we can go ahead and click create. And this will create our virtual machine. And I'm going to do the same with another server. So we'll just wait for this to complete. It shouldn't take too long. It should be pretty quick. And then we can do the next server. And as you can see, that didn't take too long to create. I'm going to move back over to my virtual machines. And I'm going to go ahead and create the next virtual machine. And we're going to pop that into the Sydney resource group. I'm going to give it a name. Call it Sydney VM. I'm going to give it a username. And I'm going to give it a password. I'm going to scroll down and go next. I'm going to change the disk to dev test because we're just testing. We're not too concerned about performance at the moment. I'm going to go next. I'm going to go ahead. Notice the IP range. It's slightly different. I'm going to click next. I'm going to turn off boot diagnostics. Click next. We're not going to worry about tagging. I'm going to click review and create. This is going to go away again. It's going to do a validation process. Once the validation has passed, we will click the create button. And once we click the create button, it will create our virtual machine. So I've clicked the create button. So let's just wait while this goes away and starts deploying that Sydney virtual machine for us. So we'll just wait while this deploys. It shouldn't take too long at all to deploy. And as you can see, our virtual machine has deployed successfully. I'm going to go up here and dismiss those notifications because we don't need them. I'm going to go back to my virtual machines. And as you can see, we've got our virtual machines running. We've got Auckland and Sydney. So I'm going to click on the Auckland VM. I'm going to click connect. I'm going to download using the RDP client. And I'm going to download that RDP file. I'm just going to open that RDP file on my desktop. And I'm going to then connect because I've got two desktops, so just bear with me while it connects. Then I'm just going to connect quickly, just drag this over so that you can see it happening. Oh, sorry about that. Open it up again. And this has authenticated me. I'm going to click yes, and it's going to open up that RDP session to that server. I'm just going to drag it over here so that you can actually see these two machines running together so that we can make sure that our vNet is working once done. So we'll let that just quickly load up. And as you can see, I'll just open up a CMD over here quickly. We'll just say yes, and we'll close Server Manager down, and then we'll RDP to the next server. So I'm going to go and put a tick in there and say okay, and of course I'm going to close that down because we don't need that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to scoot over to my Sydney machine, and I'm going to go ahead and download the RDP client for Sydney and select download. And obviously I'm going to open up this file. It's opened up on my other desktop. Just bear with me while I drag it over. And I'm going to click connect. And it's prompting me for a username and credentials. So I'll just do that quickly. log in, and I will actually log in again, and we'll just wait for a second because it's going to open up on my other screen, and then I will drag it over so that we can actually see that machine running. And of course we've got our other Windows server which is sitting over here. So I want you to take a note. We've got two different machines here. We'll grab their IPs and we'll see if we can ping each of these machines, and obviously we won't be able to connect to them. We'll go ahead and set up vNet pairing so that we can actually communicate with these virtual machines. So I'm going to close this window down because I don't need it. I'm going to close this down. So obviously what we need is our IP address. So I'm just going to open up a command prompt, and I'm going to go cmd and open up that command prompt, and I will make it a little bit bigger so that we can actually, hopefully we can see what's going on here. So I'll come down to the properties, and I'll just change that font size to a bigger font so that we can actually see what's going on. And I'll just drag this down so it's just a little bit smaller so that we can have some real estate. And I'm going to do the same with this one. I'm going to open up a command prompt on this guy and wait for him to fire up. And then once he's up and running, we will go ahead into the properties. We will just change the font to a larger font, say 24, and click OK. And just drag this over so that we can actually see what's going on. Now I'm going to go ahead here and do an IP config and press enter, and I'll just drag this window over a little bit. Oh, sorry about that. Just drag this window over a little bit so we can get our IP address. And as we can see, we've got an IP address of 10.1.0.4. Let's do the same here. Press enter, and let's just drag this bad boy over, and we can see we've got a different IP address of 10.0.0.4. So obviously if I said ping 10.1.0.4 and press enter, I should not get a reply. That should time out. And same if I went over here and I said ping 10.0.0.0.4. Oh, sorry, too many zeros there. .4, and press enter. I should also get a timed out. So what we need to do now is we need to be able to get these virtual machines talking to each other. And because they're on separate vNets, they're not going to talk. So how do we get that working? And that's pretty easy. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this, and I'm going to move back over to my Azure console. I'm going to go to virtual networks, and as you can see here, I've got my Auckland vNet and my Sydney vNet. So what we want to do is I'm going to click on the Auckland vNet, and as you can see, I'm going to go down and select pairings underneath settings. So I'm going to go ahead and underneath pairings, I'm going to go ahead and give this a name. You can give it whatever name you would like to give it. So I will just go ahead, and I've got a name typed out here, and I'm just going to paste that name in there. Obviously we can click add, sorry. We'll give it a name. I'm going to paste that name in there. It's going to say Auckland to Sydney. I'm going to allow traffic, and of course you can see we've got a VNet name. You can give it whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, you can call it Auckland to Sydney or whatever the case may be. Of course, we're not going to worry too much about our settings. In our virtual remote settings, I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to paste in there my Sydney to Auckland, and of course I'm going to select my Auckland VNet, sorry, my Sydney VNet, and we're going to allow traffic. And I'm going to go ahead and click add. Now this is going to go and add that vNet pairing. It's going to set it up for us, and it's really cool because we can do all of this within our same lab. So as you can see, it's gone ahead and it's created that Auckland to Sydney and Sydney to vNet pairing. So we'll just give that a second, and then we'll bounce back over to our virtual machines, and I'll just fire this bad boy up again. And as you can see, we've got our virtual machines there. And if I go up and I select the ping command, I'm now getting a reply because we now have those virtual machines working. And if I move up here and hit enter, I'm now getting a reply as well. So as you can see, we've just set up vNet pairing in such a short time. And I hope you guys have learned some stuff in this lab. Like I say, it's a very basic lab to get you guys up and running with creating your very first vNet pairing setup. Again, Azure is a fantastic tool. Like I say, Microsoft have come to the party. I can't say enough about it. I'm not saying Azure is the best tool out there, but it really is user-friendly. Microsoft have really made it easy for us to use and understand. And as you can see, we created a vNet in a very, very short space of time, 2 different vNets, and we connected to them using pairing. So again, I'd like to thank you guys for subscribing to my channel. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. And again, thank you so much for adding me on your LinkedIn as your connection. So again, I really appreciate that. Again, just before we close, if I click on my subnet here and I come down, you can see here my vPairing is in a successful state and it's all working. And of course, you could go ahead and save that address space or save that if you wanted to. It's all up to you at the end of the day. And of course, we've got our 2 virtual machines on 2 different networks talking to each other. So again, thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.